think I find my inspiration everywhere. I just kind of live in my own head, for better or worse, so I'm always kind of thinking and reshaping and repurposing things just by nature. I think my job is to figure out how to make all of these inspirations work together in chorus in a cohesive design. It seems that big industry, especially in transportation, long ago abandoned design for the sake of design and making something the best that it could be. And for better or worse, we're a small enough company that we don't have to beat to that rhythm. We can do our own thing, follow our passions. So when a client engages with Icon and goes on a drive, I want them to kind of feel like they're in a different time and place. I think America was made by creative individuals following their dreams. And if even in a little part I can be a part of that revival, then I've done what I've set out to do.
Well, that's like the last eloquent bit you're going to hear out of me, so I don't know what to do now. Well, free food and liquor goes a long way. Thank you guys for coming. I really appreciate it. Every time I come up here, it's so inspiring that such a massive behemoth of a company can still be driven by passion and design for design's sake, not for what's the cheapest we can make it. What's the one most like homologated, dumbed down design that we can come up with that'll appeal to like the largest mass of people? And unfortunately, transportation has totally screwed that up, in my humble opinion. And for the record, by the way, I have no degree, no formal training. I have nothing but the audacity to stand up here with an opinion and passion for what I do. So I don't know shit. So I don't have to quantify anything beyond that. But I just, coming up here, and I didn't even get to go into the kitchen this year, which really sucked. But I just love what Nike's up to, and you guys have been aware and helpful and actually quite key in allowing me to kind of grow my language with our brand and dial it into a much higher degree than we can do on our own. Because my wife and I started the company together with like 20 grand, a couple trucks, a credit card, a wing and a prayer, no business plan, no SWOT analysis, no focus groups, no nothing. And the first company we started was called TLC, which was all vintage Toyota Land Cruisers. And no major genius ideas. It was just simply, at that time, in the early, mid-90s, no one was doing quality restoration to vintage utility vehicles. So that was reserved for the Mustangs, the Mercedes, the Chevy Bel Airs, whatever. And utility vehicles, people throw like a crappy paint job and some chrome wheels and get it running and call it good enough. But from my time traveling a lot overseas, I realized that it's a life and death trust that people put in these sorts of vehicles. And they literally make the difference between getting product to market, getting away from the flood, surviving the famine. The relationship with the utility vehicle in a global sense is very different from us going surfing or going to the market or what have you. And the value in the design and the continuity and the intelligence in the design that Toyota had mastered at that time just really inspired me. So that's why we opened the first company. And then I did some prototype work for Toyota and did the FJ Cruiser design development for them. Then I was really bummed because they took my 3 prototypes and the board members voted on which of the 3 they liked the most. And then they took it to their in-house design studio and then did the same sort of, I don't know, sort of formulaic anime version, Xbox goggle, retro, new, and they kind of lost the focus of utility that made the original vehicle so brilliant to me. And about that same time, I was getting kind of bored because in defining TLC, we were kind of a dead stock or go away. And we're starting to see people more and more wanting to like fuse. Basically, they'd have an affinity with the vintage aesthetic, but not with the archaic mechanical. So traditionally, back since like the 60s, guys would throw V8s in them, but you'd be trading an evil. So now it's heavier and it overheats, but it's quicker, but then the brakes burn out because the brakes weren't intending. It was like a chain reaction, and I realized the only way to really do it right, or do it better, is to take more responsibility over the platform. So I had been doing like night school and extension classes and things that moved me. And I started to notice like somewhat of a perfect storm, a convergence of incredibly quick, like right now even, just like in the last 90 days, any of you tech geeks notice the innovations that have come out in reverse engineering and laser mapping, and like, it's incredible. So Icon wouldn't have been possible even just 10 years ago because it took the convergence of a consumer that was more disenchanted than ever with the big box brands, with the same plastic fantastic and the marketing, and even amazing storied automotive brands now are marketeers. They're marketing companies. You buy that bespoke, brilliant car, the brand, you understand the value you get in it, what was demasked and machine turned and tactile and delicious. You touch it and it's plastic. It's a Mylar print. It's a shadow of its former self. But hey, it worked because you bought the piece of shit. But to me, there's already enough crap in the world, so I wanted to do things that just made me giddy to make. And the idea for Icon was facilitated by the consumer being tired of what was available, the low volume manufacturing capabilities and reverse engineering techniques that kind of all came together. And so we just went for it, and we did it. We went back to Toyota and said, are we cool? We own the FJ40 trademark because we own all those marks because they never trademarked them. It was the weirdest thing. So we explained to them, said, we have this idea, and we're always going to celebrate the history of automobiles from the past, but we're going to revisit them in a modern context. Are we cool, or is that a problem? Because obviously Toyota is like 3 black towers full of attorneys, and I wouldn't stand a chance. And fortunately, Toyota thought we were like, whatever kid, like to go for it. And so they've been very kind and supportive to this day. So we first launched with the FJ40, because that's the one that was closest to my heart and we had the most experience in. And then after we launched that one, we moved in and added the FJ43, which is kind of a cheap move because 99.9999% of the engineering carried right over. We just added 16.5 inches to it. But it's a non-USA model that the States never got. And then the 44 was our own creation because, well, basically because I was on the phone with a guy and he wanted it, and his wife said, hell no. Whatever you get, you've got to be able to take all the kids, and this guy has a brood. So I literally did a crude, dirty South Park quality rendering while the guy was on the phone and shipped it to him like, how about this? And his wife's in the background and she approved it. So use that same crappy rendering 4 more times in the next 2 weeks and sold 5 of them. So sweet, that covers engineering costs. So we made that our newest model. And then we did the 45 pickup, which I love them, but they don't sell very well. And of all of our models, they ride the worst because the engineering ancient battle of sprung and unsprung weight is become quite a conundrum. So we build the bodies out of 50/50 2H32 unannealed marine-rated aluminum. And the original ones were steel, which is a big problem. But now the issue is, my axle's a Dana 60, which is like a boat anchor. So we're fighting the fact that we're too light upstairs and too heavy downstairs. But so be it. And then we did the Bronco. And the Bronco was one of my favorites. It was a popular request, but over time, we were always sending out PowerPoints or begging or being quiet and just doing it and hoping no one would get pissed and sue us. But that was the first time an OEM actually reached out to us. So Jim Farley, who's I think his title is Global Marketing or Brand Manager for Ford, he had worked back at Toyota when we did the FJ Cruiser together. And he said, hey, we're thinking about bringing back the Bronco. Would you build a show car? And being the opportunistic pig that I am, I said, well, yeah, we'd build a show car, but we actually want to make it our next production model. And then around that time, friends at Nike had sort of kind of, not committed, but managed to say, well, next time you're doing an interesting project, reach out. We'd love to play together. So when this came along, I was like, oh, yeah. So Coop. Wow, we're doing this Bronco. So the kitchen was instrumental in the development of this truck. And we swooshed the truck on the CNC data tag as sort of an acknowledgement quietly. And then the Bronco details. I mean, there's tons of stuff that we did, but Camilo Pardo and I did all the design work, but just like 2D PDF, like here. And then the Genius staff in the kitchen helped us realize the models and do SLAs and SLS, and then digitize it and analyze material, et cetera. So we basically with all of our projects, the idea is before the business structure necessitates watering down a design, like what did the guy who first drew it, like what did he have in mind? What would he have done with details like handles and mirrors that express the same sort of language and continuity with his body shape? But the dynamics of that scale of businesses, things like the original door handle, I think were Mustang handles. The rearview mirrors were parts bin from Falcon. So there was sort of a loss of purity in the vision of the continuity in the design. So that was good fun. And that's all, we cast it all in stainless steel. And then the front piece is 6061 billet. Starts as a 96-pound chunk, and then we mill it down and anodize it. And then Nike helped us develop those. Oh, I'm going the wrong way. So yeah, and there's our data tags. So we always number series where they are in the series and swoosh them, and that's hidden underneath. Then we did the CJs. Like these are our least successful commercially, but actually one of my favorites. Best way to describe them is the mechanical equivalent of a really good pair of flip-flops. So, there are better choices to get on the 6-hour commute on the freeway, but they're fun in their red environment. And Willys, to me, represented three things that are sorely missing from modern mainstream automotive priorities. So durability, simplicity, and longevity, which actually nowadays, the OEMs have realized goes against the business model. Actually, Toyota studied from Microsoft, and they said, well, no, wait a minute. So you guys sell a laptop, and when the battery's dead, 90% of the customers come back and buy a new laptop and not a battery. How do you do that? We like that. So now this priority of planned obsolescence and complete disregard for process and material waste and landfill fodder, it's just a travesty. I mean, it's gnarly, the industrial waste and transportation. And when transportation companies of old were design firms, they had the balls to let one guy, for better or worse, define what a particular brand's priorities were, what it was, and they weren't trying to be something for everyone. But nowadays, it's focus groups, it's marketing studies, it's planned obsolescence. They've realized it's better business for it to fall apart at the end of your lease cycle and go in the trash and go buy another one. And I just think it serves us all better to build something to be the best it can be for the sake of design and quality and purpose and passion and pride versus just putting more crap out in the world. It seems like there's plenty of it. This is our latest production model we launched called the Thriftmaster. It's basically based on the 47 to 53 Chevy 3100 pickup. And this was really fun because I'm a major geek for Raymond Loewy. And for this one, I figured, okay, like what if Loewy had done it? I think he was at Studebaker at that time. So all the details on it were just fun, like handles and knobs and switches and armrests. Then we did this electric bike, which, to be frank, I can't take much credit for, although we've been given a lot of credit for it. I met a 22-year-old kid at Pebble Beach at a show last year, and paint was still drying on his prototype. And turned out he was a fan of my brand, and we got to talking. So I started helping him with resources for sand casting and everything, and trying to encourage him to keep everything domestic. And like 5 months into it, we should do an Icon edition.
And we've been really happy with those. It's really good. We just sold out of the first launch of 50, and we're just now working on a new version, which will be out in a couple months. Worst business, most fun are our derelicts. So the idea is take some of the Japanese aesthetic of like wabi-sabi, of temporary, it's constantly evolving and active, natural patina, it's fun. The true story behind that, though, was I have a bad habit of restoring things to every little thing, and then I can't really drive it or use it in the first scratch. I don't want to be that jerk. And I have kids and dogs and surfing and life. And otherwise, it'd be fun to do one up but not do it up and leave it all beat. And I stumbled into this car and built it. And again, because I'm not that smart, I built it and drove it for a while and then went, oh yeah, it could be. It's kind of still an icon because it's all modern. We basically take the vintage bodies, usually cars from the 30s to the 60s. We lift them off the old chassis. We use various tech, but Faro or QLabs, tri-top laser, map it, get it into CAD, go into SolidWorks or CATIA, engineer a modern chassis. So again, the whole idea is modern functionality. Technology evolved, styling kind of did, but not in a way I like. So that mashup of vintage and modern in how it enables and enhances the use, but staying with the tradition. So this one's mine. It's the first one we did. It's a 52 DeSoto wagon. That's running a 6.1 Hemi SRT8, 550 horse, 6-speed ABS brakes, full emissions, stainless exhaust, and blah, blah, blah. That one's good fun. 46 Lincoln Club Coupe, one of my favorite cars. Great ass. The ass on that car just goes and goes. That's running a 2014 Mustang GT powertrain. And then we worked with Edelman Leathers and CNC'd like this stainless rolling pin with this really cool Nouveau pattern. Then we steamed the hide and embossed the hide. I think Howard, because I talked too much and I asked too many slides, I think Howard had me trim it down. I don't know if I have pictures of the interior, but it was really cool, trust me. 52 Chevy Styleline Coupe, that's our render. That's the done car. We found it in a barn rotting in Texas, bought it on eBay, original paint, killer car. I like doing the freaks and the geeks and the outliers and not the iconic models. Wait a minute. But not the one you'd expect. So the orphans or the dud models or the forgotten variants. This car was just crazy, though. The interior in its own right is ripe with story. But the client's a repeat offender with us and quite a character. And he's an avid hunter. And he brought up, is there any way to do something there? So in the interior, I'd never done it before. So I'm like, OK, sure, let's do crocodile interior. So my dumbass sits down and I just start sketching out what I think it should look like. And then we go to our traditional suppliers for hides. Like, forget about it. You are so dreaming. Look at these big gnarly tiles and wanted only 2 panels per seat section. Like, it's not going to happen. So I guess there's only 2 commercially viable suppliers now for farms for gator, and one's owned, I think, by Hermes and the other by Yves Saint Laurent. So they do a 4-year life cycle, these tiny ass tiles, because they're shoes and purses. So I wouldn't take no for an answer, and I Googled my brains out. And I found a guy in Florida who runs his company out of a double wide through a Magic Jack. Genius. And the guy was just a rock star. So this is all our chassis engineering, but so 2012 Camaro Super Sport powertrain, full emissions equipped. And the interior was just so, I hate the steering wheel now. I have a new way of doing that, it's better. But so we did goat gut with the cross stitch, because I always liked that tradition. And I think it took about 1.5 years all in to hunt the hides, find the hides, process the hides. And then we got into dyeing the hides. Online, I found the original aniline code mix for the briefcase that Hermes gifted to JFK. It's just killer brown. It's like, oh, yeah. So then we geeked out on that and then dyed and processed the hides. And then the side panels are done in deer and then the goat gut. That one came out so cool. Incredibly inefficient, but it was really cool. And then the fun stuff on the inside. We always leave the gauges original and leave the patina and the funk. And if the glass is cracked on the gauges, it stays cracked. It's like part of the fun. But then hiding behind it, it's all modern VDO. We partner with circuit-driven controls. We did have some fun in steampunk out the clock, though. So that's now a tachometer. So that marks the red line, and then the minute hand spins like crazy and goes around, which is kind of fun. That's why I love the derelicts the most, because creatively, every one of them, I mean, we learn a lot on the engineering front, because if it's an Aston Martin and we're using a modern Aston powertrain, then we're learning a whole new thing there in the electronics and CAN bus networks and mapping of those motors, through to just the different design language through the eras. It's incredible that this is a job. Then we do the reformers, which are a little bit more digestible to the mainstream, which the idea is then basically concourse quality restorations, looking very original, again, hiding functionality and modern goodness. So that's a 1962 FJ40, but then it's running a Corvette powertrain and 6-piston brakes and coil suspension, but you'd never know it. Whoopsies. That one's fun. Brooks Stevens design, one of my favorites, Jeepster, 1950. So that's running a modern, about 32 mile per gallon GM, 4-cylinder variable valve timing. We kept it very traditional. Usually the older the car, the more I see more continuity in the design, and I screw with it less. You get into the 60s, things started really going wrong, so there's a lot more opportunities to get into the details, like this truck. It's one of my favorites. It's 1965 Dodge D200 crew cab, basically the two-wheel drive of the Power Wagon, used by the Air Force as like tarmac patrol and like Department of Water and Power. So they weren't built very well, and they got their asses kicked and put away wet, so they're really hard to find. But they're so funky that I think they're gorgeous. Like look at the swoosh. Yay. But just the cleanliness in the line, it was such a great platform. So on this, we took the body shell, the seat frames, and the steering wheel, and then we took a new Dodge 3500 mega cab turbo diesel truck, and then I redesigned the mirrors, the handles, the badging, the grille, the lighting, the interior, gas cap, bumpers, everything. And then Gail Banks, who's one of my heroes, monkeyed with the turbo diesel powertrain, so 975 pounds of torque. It moves like a freight train, and we actually put a vintage freight train horn in it. It's really obnoxious, but it's cool. But the glass is, I like to, again, transportation just sucks for design nowadays. Like, even the material and supplier base, it's all about price point, price point, price point. Or can we make it look like that nice thing, but make it by moving the decimal point 2 points over and just cutting corners? So on this one, like glass, skyscraper glass, I always thought that's cool. I mean, they've got different reflectives and matte values and colors. And in transportation, we have glass. And then we have window tinting. So they thought we were nuts, but we finally talked them into it. Got Siemens to work with us to take skyscraper glass, and then we wet CNC it and then temper it so it becomes automotive safety glass. So once they were dumb enough to work with me once, we're doing it all the time. Like, yeah. And I mean, you can get into greens and browns and all these different tones. It's cool. And then on the inside on that one, like all this stuff's all CNC'd and stainless. We actually did some of it in aluminum on the inside for some engineering problem reasons, and we screwed ourselves and had to back up a nickel plate and brush all of it, which, oh my God, what a train wreck. The interior on this one, though, is good fun. There's more of the details we redesigned. The K, by the way, was kind of a cool backstory. I met the client, and dude's body tatted like up to here, like not a square inch of free space on his body. And really the only tat of interest to me was on his hand, he had this funky K, and we were asking him about it. And it was his family's ranch brand that goes back like 5 generations. So I snuck a picture of it, and then we integrated it into the client. So that's on the center of the front of the grill and on the horn button. This truck's so much fun. It's inspired a couple more that we're doing. And then stuff like, we had to use the modern gauges because of the CAN bus electronics, so we interfaced those. The ashtray is now on linear actuators and repurposed for engine management, navigation, and audio management. I don't know if I have any interior slides, but we partnered with my buddies at this cool, there we go. This company called Parabellum. They make these super groovy belts with like ballistic ceramic, and they're Kevlar lined and totally unnecessary. So I take Tempur-Pedic foam because I'm cursed with an open mind, and I love my mattress. And I'm like, well, why don't we use that in a car? So we took a hot knife, and carved up a damaged Tempur-Pedic, and I highly recommend that. It works really good. And then we did all this. This is all American bison hide with the ceramics, and then a traditional double stitch, and then their attaché bag. We use the Bentley 10X snaps, which are these really cool snaps on the inboard. So then those have continued utility outside of the car. They're not just look a luxury bag, but they justified their presence. These people love dearly. Oh, did anyone work here with Michael Datillo? Anyone remember Michael Datillo? His Converse, good buddy of mine. He used to secretly moonlight when he was working here and work with me on stuff. Now we can be open about our relationship. So people love these. Does anyone have one? Good. They suck. They're such a piece of shit. They're beautiful. But the dude who drew the original truck had nothing to do with the execution. To me, they're a very good example of the unfortunate state of high-volume trans. Just the execution quality of every last thing just sucks. So I usually am able to talk people out of them. And this guy was not able to talk out of it. Same with another guy we're doing a 110. But it was really a fun exercise. So we basically got rid of all the plastic stuff and used the body shell and then re-engineered into different bumpers and wind diode, put an engine that actually runs and brakes that actually stop, and other novel ideas for Land Rover. And Land Rover doesn't like me. They actually cock-blocked me at a big event once, like sent me my check back and you cannot come. Well, I sell like 10 cars a year, really. But I don't know if you're familiar with the platform, but the dash is like Toys R Us aisle 5, blow-molded ABS. I mean, it's just an abomination. So the Series 2 and Series 1 Rovers had this really cool cove design. So that was really fun to kind of play with the history. And like one thing I love about Nike's success is the way they'll look at the traditional solutions or product lines and then revamp and revisit them, but in a modern context, all the way through to the materials, the efficiencies, the considered value, and all of that. And I've always seen a lot of similarities in that you guys have way more toys to play with and more money to play with. This is another project we're doing right now. This fine, dapper gentleman is named Ercole Espada. He's one of my heroes. He was the design chief at Zagato back in the 50s. And David Brown at Aston Martin wanted to race at Le Mans. He had a new motor and he had the new car, the DB4 GT. He went out. Was that house lights telling me to shut up? So he went and raced a friend who had a modern V12, and just the guy annihilated him. The guy said, the only way you can be competitive is you got to go to Italy, and you got to have a Superleggera lightweight. So he called Zagato. Ercole was like 21 at the time, had been on the job 3 weeks. No one had called. He picks up the phone. It's David Brown from Aston. He's totally into it. So he designed this iconic car, the DB4 Zagato GT. But the problem was the two companies hated each other, major alpha male problem between Mr. Zagato and Mr. Brown. So by car 18, they would not ever meet again. It was over 30 years before the companies worked together. And they falsified documents for Le Mans cars 19 and 20 to compete. And then the car performed horribly, but that's another story. So I had heard a folklore story, actually I read it in an Aston book, that he was doing a shooting brake and a barchetta and variations, and they never got made. So when one of my clients said he wanted to do one of our reformers and he was an Aston geek, I was like, yes, I talked him into it. So I went ahead and designed the car on my own because I couldn't find this sketch. The people at Aston were like, piss off, didn't want to talk to me. My client, I like literally bought a $20 model on eBay and sat in the backyard with a glass of scotch and kind of sketched it and played with it. And then Datillo and I did a series of renderings. Client approves the car. A week later, I'm telling another guy, goes, oh, why didn't you tell me Mr. Spada's a dear friend? He was just at my daughter's wedding. Like, are you kidding me? So we showed it to him. We threw away everything because he said before he dies, he wants to see the car done and done right. Prince Geoffrey and the Sultan of Brunei have done them on their own, and Ercole said, this is shit. So the coolest guy, Italian, so slower than molasses. We're 3 years into this job. We hope to debut it at Pebble Beach. But the idea for me was to build I like the concept of alternative histories. So if it wasn't for that personality conflict, this would have been created. So to partner with him is an honor. And then we bought a new Aston for the V12 and mechanical goodies. We built our own custom chassis, did the mechanical interface, the CATIA modeling, then put it on a plane, sent it to Italy, and then him and his son are with a company called Salt are doing the body for us. And I'm super stoked about it. And that's like where I love what we're doing and want to keep doing that, but I'm such a geek that once I do it the first time and it goes into production, I really could care less. Like, business-wise, I have to care, and we have to have repeatability because our industry is so in the Stone Age that my job is to find that measure between efficiencies and high volume and apply them to what we do. But this is what really gets me, is the scratch build stuff for alternate histories. And some more detail stuff. But basically, the one I'm totally geeking on right now is asking a couple theoreticals of, if it weren't for the change in culture brought on by the Industrial Revolution, where volume and scale trumped detail and quality, if it wasn't for the austerity brought on by the Depression and World War II, and if transportation had looked to aircraft design maybe about a decade prior than they did in mass, what would that be? So like streamlined moderne is one of my favorite languages. I just love it. So where would that have gone? So like if Gordon Burig had gotten drunk with Howard Hughes after Howard did the DC-1 experimental plane, what would that car have been? Like, what would, if Howard wasn't completely batshit crazy, what would he have taken Cruella de Vil out in? Like, you know? So these are sort of my panels showing where we're going, and we're not there yet. I think I finally networked my brains into a meeting with Elon Musk, and I feel very strongly about trying to forge a partnership with them. I want to take the new Model X platform, so it's selective all-wheel drive, 380-mile range, pure electric, and fuse that with this lost language. So I won't geek out too much on techniques, but old school English wheel planish hammer meets CATIA, meets SLA for, meets hydroforming, superforming, Kirksite stamping, new efficiencies that make crazy stuff like this viable, and start to develop this language. So it's audacious, it's large, it's 5-passenger, it's burnished aluminum, exposed copper rivets, leather strapping. Like, I almost say, like, steampunk's gone the wrong way, so it's not really, I don't know the right language for it, but this one I'm super stoked about. So, and I've got a meeting with Ralph Lauren to talk about something else, but he doesn't know I'm totally planning on taking over the room and making him buy this fucker, because like, I think it's up his alley. Like, his car collection is the holy grail, but most of them suck to drive except for the McLaren, so that's my pitch. But so that's my next big dream I'm trying to get done, and we're still geeking with it. And there's like Voisin was one of my favorite designers who took a lot of, he was actually, him and his brother flew before the Wright brothers ever got off the ground, but it was for the French military, World War I, so they never publicized it. But Voisin cars, if you don't know it, rock star bitchin', super cool. And then there's a famous car called the Round Door Rolls. It's one of my favorites in that streamlined language. That had this interesting dual sunroof concept, so we're looking to add that in. And that's pretty much my whole story. Recently, I finally, I read Built to Last, and I'm like, oh yeah, core values. We probably should write those down. So these are our pending core values, which I think I've made clear, but you know, be proud of what you do or don't do it. Challenge convention. I think so many brands and products get stuck in, oh, they see a market for something, and then they want to attack that market and take a share. But I think designers and creative geeks, you're born with a natural way of seeing the world, and I think the more that we teach people to embrace that, the better the world's going to be and the better product's going to be. And that's a big part of what we try and do in integrating innovation and quality. I don't need to read it. You already read it. That's pretty much my whole story. And I'm proud to be asked to be here. I'm proud to work with my wife and employ so many people doing stuff that we're all proud to do. And to me, it's just about respecting your perspective. All of us as creative people, as free thinkers. That's what this country was born on. That's what great products are born on. And I'm so pissed at the education system and our government telling us basically go to Target and everything will be fine. But you know, we're not traditionally just a nation of consumers. we're tinkerers, we're creators, we're risk takers, and I don't see how we can maintain or get our preeminence back without reinvigorating that spirit. So in my own little way, that's what I'm trying to do. So thank you.